the national emergencies that have been issued in the past have not been contentious. I'm pretty sure that this one would be.
If today the national emergency is border security and it entitles him to go out and do something, we all support that. Tomorrow, the national security emergency might be, climate change.
To just be another erosion of congressional authority in this particular area.
I think it's of dubious constitutionality.
You think it's worth backing the president on this issue of a national emergency if it avoids another government shutdown?
Well, I think the key fact here to remember is, to quote John Boehner, there's no such thing as a Republican Party anymore. There's just the Trump Party. And all those senators who are clearing their throats and muttering concerns, they're all going to fall into line. They're all going to sanction this serious erosion of the separation of powers. I mean, if there is one principle that has been enshrined in the Constitution since the 18th century, it's that Congress has the power of the purse. And, the single exception is this National Emergencies Act of 1976, where every president since then, in a handful of uncontroversial cases, has reallocated money without explicit congressional authorization. That is nothing like what's going on here. This is a wildly dramatic expansion of presidential power, and the Republicans are going to clear their throats and fall into line like they always do.
It's interesting, David Swirly, because the president, when he was a private citizen, he used to rail against President Obama when he would move money around, didn't declare national emergency necessarily. In 2014, the president, as a private citizen, tweeted this: Republicans must not allow President Obama to subvert the Constitution of the U.S. for his own benefit and because he is unable to negotiate with Congress. What do you make of that?
Right, and you can imagine that if it was President Obama now doing the action that President Trump is proposing to do, Republicans would be howling. President Obama, it's well known that he executive ordered the DAPA program, not DACA, but DAPA, Deferred Action for Parents of Americans, that would have provided legal protections for millions of undocumented immigrants. Ultimately, the Obama administration lost in appeals court. There was a 4-4 Supreme Court tie that kept it as a loss for the Obama administration, and it was a clear signal that he had overreached his power as the executive branch. I think you have a situation here where Republicans who were critical then are, as Jeffrey said, going to probably fall in line with an executive overreach, in this case by President Trump.
Laura, we don't know how the president, what specifically how the president is going to divert potentially billions of dollars from existing appropriated funds to go ahead and use that money to build his wall. But legally, what do you anticipate happening?
Well, a couple different steps. I think we'll probably see a slew of lawsuits from different interest groups right away, questionable whether they have standing or not. And then it seems likely we might see a resolution of disapproval from the House. Chairman Jerry Nadler has sort of hinted at this already. And if that happens, then it turns to the Senate for a vote. And that's where things could get dicey. Given all the Republicans, you played all that sound from them, do they hold firm on that or do they back the president? McConnell has signaled that he would back the president, but will the rest of them fall in line?
In McConnell backing the president.
Hold on, Jeffrey. Go ahead.
McConnell backing the president on that is so stunning because he is someone who has been staunchly opposed to the president declaring a national emergency. So it really indicates just how much and how seriously McConnell thought the president was going to oppose this bill for him to come out. Because otherwise, he could have gotten a group of senators to block the president from doing so. But by announcing his support for it today, it shows just how much the Senate Republicans who were opposed to a national emergency declaration didn't want another shutdown.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Well, it's just, they're all, Jeff Flake is gone from the Senate, but his spirit lives on. All these senators is like, oh, I'm so concerned about what the president is going to do. And they're all going to fall in line. They are all going to, follow the Fox News line that the president needs this power. And, we'll see what happens down the road with other presidents. I mean, who knows, how that's likely to be a long time away. But, I mean, this is a Republican Party that has absolutely no principles except supporting Donald Trump.
Caitlin, I'm going to play a clip. This is about a year or so ago when the president was also forced to sign an omnibus spending bill that he hated, but he did it. He made this promise to the American people.
But I say to Congress, I will never sign another bill like this again. I'm not going to do it again. Nobody read it. It's only hours old. Some people don't even know what it is. $1.3 trillion. It's the second largest ever.
All right, so that he made that promise. Now let's talk about what he's doing now. That was an 800-page bill. This is what, an 1,100-page bill that only a few experts, legislative assistants up on Capitol Hill have had a chance to read it. Most members have not been able to go through 1,100 pages, and it may be 1.375 billion in this legislation for a border wall, but it's part of a $330 billion overall spending bill to keep the government going, a big chunk of the going. So how did White House officials explain the commitment he made to the American people a year ago, and now once again repeating what he did then?
Well, the ones who were there a year ago are having flashbacks basically right now, especially after the president was so on the fence today about signing this, coming close to not signing it. As of this afternoon, before McConnell interrupted Grassley to go out there and speak, White House aides were saying that they thought the president was leaning towards no. So that when President Trump made that remark there, that was when he was going to sign that bill. He thought it didn't have enough money for the wall, but it was Defense Secretary James Mattis who convinced the president to sign it because they had all this money for the military, and he went to the president. He said, this is worth it. But it was a lot of intense lobbying in the White House. It was a day pretty much like what today has unfolded like, and the only reason the president signed it in the end was because of Mattis. So this case, they had to bring in the DHS secretary, convincing the president that this didn't give amnesty to people, talking about the ICE detention beds, talking about the over $1 billion for the border wall. It was a very intense lobbying effort to get the president underway. And I want to note that a lot of this, what White House aides look out for when something like this happens, is what the coverage is going to be, because a lot of that can deter the president from making a certain decision. And that's why over the last 48 hours, there were a lot of calls from the White House to some of the president's favorite news hosts telling them how this bill could be a win for the president, because they know the coverage can sometimes affect the president's decision.
Right. Yeah, well, to Caitlin's point, the president wants a win that looks like he ethered the Democrats, that he silenced his critics and put them all back on their heels. And what he's learned both last year in that clip you played and this year is that legislation usually doesn't work out like that. People have to somehow meet in the middle and move on. And I think that's why you're seeing him declare this emergency, because it signals to his base, I'm still fighting even though I sort of caved in on the wall.
This legislation, Jeffrey, and you got a little smile on your face, I see, it's about 1,100 pages long. It was finally approved, completed last night, went around midnight, and then they voted earlier tonight. They didn't even have 24 hours to go through this legislation.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an open secret that no one reads most of the legislation, especially the budget legislation. But I don't think that's the real issue here. The real issue here is the substance and this incredible miscalculation that the president made about his beloved wall. That each time he has thrown a fit about it, instead of getting more money, he's getting less money. I mean, he could have had $25 billion, then he could have had $6 billion, he could have had $1.6 billion, now he's getting $1.3 billion, and, somehow they're trying to convince the folks at Fox News that this was all a brilliant legislative strategy. I mean, they can try, and I'm sure that's what they'll say on Fox, but, I mean, these facts exist in the world.
So, and a lot of what changed since that text came out around midnight last night was the president was growing worried this morning that there were going to be things in this bill that caught him off guard. That was his concern when you showed that clip of him signing that 800-page bill. That was the concern here, because the White House knew the top lines after Monday night when they emerged, but they were going through all of this. They weren't sure what the certain restrictions would be on the money that they do have for the wall in here, what kind of wall they could build. And you've seen disagreement between the Democrats and Republicans, like Shelley Moore Capito, on what exactly they would be able to do. So that was a concern for the president. You heard him say that when he said, I'm worried there could be landmines in here. So I think that was a big concern for them. But obviously this lobbying from his own staffers helped push him over the line.
Because originally, after we got the report that the appropriators have come up with some sort of compromise, Sean Hannity on Fox News said it was a garbage compromise. But then the next day, he changed his mind, saying if the president declares a national emergency, maybe it's okay. And that's exactly what the president did.
And that's what the White House was telling those hosts when they were trying to convince them to spin it more positively, that this could be a win for the president. They said two things. One, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is taking a loss here because she said the president wouldn't get more than $1 for his wall, and he's getting over $1 billion in this for fencing. And two, they said that the president was going to declare a national emergency or take some kind of executive action, both of which was included in Sarah Sanders' statement today, to get more money for that wall. So that's how they were trying to frame it better for people like Sean Hannity that the president watches almost every night.
Does the Justice Department, Laura, need to go ahead and provide a legal opinion to the president and the White House right now, what he can do and what he can't do as far as reallocating money?
I think it's safe to assume the Justice Department has probably had that in the works for a long time. We don't have any specific reporting on that, but in a situation like this, any executive order is supposed to, I say that because we remember what happened with the travel ban, but supposed to go through the Office of Legal Counsel, which essentially serves as the law firm for the federal government. It's supposed to go through that. It's supposed to be vetted by DOJ. White House counsel's office, I'm sure, has been working hand in glove with them many, many nights to try to make sure that if he goes through with this, they're prepared and they're not caught off guard the way they were with some of the other executive
And they
orders.
have been preparing for that. It's not like he decided today to do a national emergency. He's been talking about it since the night he agreed to sign this 3-week short-term spending bill, telling allies, I'll sign a national emergency. So aides have been working behind the scenes, trying to make sure they are going through all the legal loopholes because they don't want to face a lot of challenges. So they have been preparing for that. I do think they've had a lot of lawyers looking at this.